Hello and welcome to the Mr. 50mm YouTube channel. I'm Chris, also Mr. 50mm. When I was shooting the IR video with my Panasonic G1, I mentioned that I got my G1H for free. After I shot the video, I quickly looked into what the GH1 actually goes for on eBay. And when I found out, I realized these are an excellent bargain. Like, they're really cheap. I then reviewed the purchases I made after I got the GH1 to, set it up to do some picture taking. And I realized that getting set up with Micro Four Thirds on the system has hardly cost me anything. With that in mind, I dug a little bit deeper into the camera and I thought, man, this might be an excellent gateway camera into Micro Four Thirds. And I think it's an excellent gateway camera into photography in general, in 2024 no less. And I know what you're thinking. Time for me to close this video. But wait. Please wait. Hear me out. I know this camera is from 2009, but it just doesn't feel that old. I mean, it's old, but just because it's old doesn't mean you can't take photos anymore. And on the plus side, this thing has a video mode, like a pretty solid one, 1080p, encapsulated in like interlaced footage for some reason. But, that's not going to stop me from using it. So yeah, let's get into this. What is the GH1? Well, in short, it's this. It's the second camera released by Panasonic under the Micro Four Thirds lineup. The camera was introduced in March of 2009, and it's actually, I think, the first Panasonic camera to feature the multi-aspect ratio sensor. It basically lets you pick the aspect ratio, but rather than constraining your aspect ratio and cropping into the using the Micro Four Thirds sensor, the sensor itself is actually like a smidgen bigger, and it lets you shoot from a wide selection of ratios without affecting the effective field of view. It's kind of weird. I'm going to put a graphic over top, and I will try to just show you in a second.
Alright. It kind of sucks to explain this without a graphic, so I'm going to borrow one from the internet, and I'll show you. Thanks, HannockHomepage.de. I'll link to the original source where I found the graphic down below. But basically, there's a little bit more sensor than the standard Micro Four Thirds 2x crop sensor, and it's used for maintaining the same field of view for any aspect ratio that you choose. Either way, this is a 14 megapixel sensor that outputs 12.1 megapixels where the normal 4/3 output is selected.
Right. So this camera will do ISO 100 to 3200. It shoots at a blistering 3 FPS for up to 7 RAWs. It actually has a rear 3-inch display, good for 760 K dots, and you might have noticed it does the tilty flippy. So overall, pretty versatile. But more importantly than that, you got a 1.4 million dot EVF. I don't know why I'm holding the camera back to show you the EVF. It's like very small, but it is there, and it is not amazing, but it's fairly good. Better than nothing, better than not having one. And just in case you're wondering, the EVF displays 60 hertz, so no 120 there, but again, really much better than not having one. I really don't like cameras that don't have EVFs. And if I can, I will buy one for it to make it have one. Like I was saying before, the camera does also shoot video, 1080p, encapsulated in interlaced 60i. So, I don't know. It's kind of weird, but more importantly, AF works in movie mode in this camera, and it has a mic input. I mean, it's 2.5 millimeters, so it's kind of weird, but it's there. So, that's a win. And it's like right a little flappy right there. You got your mic input. Lastly, this thing has a poppy-uppy flash, and it has a pretty max sync speed of 1/160th. But otherwise, it's not bad. Price. As I mentioned earlier, the price for these is really cheap. In fact, I got mine for $0. But assuming that you can get yours for $0, they're very cheap on the eBays. I've seen a couple online for like $55 to $60 for just the body. And there are a few kits that had the kit lens for about $100. So like overall, like really a cheap camera. And like, as I said in the previous video about IR photography, like you can get these a little cheaper if you don't mind getting ones that like already have failing vulcanization on the rubberized coating. You get a sticky camera. And again, not a big deal if you do get one with that and like you want to save money and get rock bottom prices, because all you need to do is get a pack of cotton swabs, get some isopropyl alcohol, and you can scrub that stuff off and it'll be smooth. You're not going to have a rubberized grip anymore, but it'll be way more comfortable. And yeah, saves you a little bit of money, and it gets you a pretty solid camera. So if you think about that, that's an insane level of depreciation for this camera, and it's kind of nice because it kind of means that like there isn't that much lower for this thing to go. Like $55. Like if you get lower than that, you are effectively just like throwing it out. So if you buy this camera and you decide that Micro Four Thirds is not for you, just sell it for the same price like a year down the road. I literally can't see these getting any cheaper. Like the price for like a Canon 30D from 2005 or like, Olympus 420, E420, it's like they're higher. They're a little higher than these. So like the prices, like I keep going back to this, but it's just insane. Like if you look online for Micro Four Thirds, you can probably find a Olympus EPL1 or maybe the EP1. And like if you're patient, you can maybe find the Sony Nex 3. Well, like these alternatives don't have built-in EVFs, and for like controls and handling, the GH1 wins hands down. It's a much better feeling camera, at least to me. And again, that EVF is a really big point. Like the only other things that you're finding in this price point are like Nikon D40s and D60s, but even then, like the fact that they have CCDs have boosted these things up, they're like worth a little more now. So like these are very cheap. And again, while they lack a couple things, like generally at the price point for Micro Four Thirds, like very much worth going into. And the other thing about this camera is that even though it's from 2009, third-party batteries are plentiful. And like they're about $20 each if you need to get one. Like my GH1 and G1 are on their original batteries still, and they still hold a charge like they were brand new. Anyways, moving on, we'll hopefully get into like why else to choose this camera very soon. But based on the average video duration, might not be that soon. Another reason to give the GH1 a try, the Micro Four Thirds mount. It is versatile. Again, since this is part of the Micro Four Thirds system, you also get like an excellent upgrade path. Panasonic and OM systems continue to like push the edges of what Micro Four Thirds can do, and like the camera itself now, like the system is established. There's a ton of glass for it, which you're probably aware of, and they vary from price points of being cheap and cheerful kit lenses to reasonable budget primes to big expensive zooms. but most importantly for all, the mount versatility that comes from like being able to adapt your vintage glass or even modern glass is fairly good, especially if you're budget conscious. Adapters for basically every system exist, and they tend to be pretty cheap. Aside from like, the AF enabled Canon EF speed booster or whatever, they're not super expensive. And like I said, come in any mount. So what we have on here, let's say, it's a C-mount lens. Now I want to shoot Leica, so I can jam a Leica adapter on there. And there you go. Now the Panasonic is shooting with a Voigtlander 28mm 1.9, but don't want to do that. Whatever. How about M42? Got that too. In fact, these are like so common. Files are available for you to 3D print adapters if you so choose. Now, that being said, you do have to take into account that, again, Micro Four Thirds 2x crop, so things are going to just be more telly than you might be used to. But lately, I found that like I'm very comfortable shooting Micro Four Thirds using like 28 to 35mm lenses, and like with those bringing the field of view more in line with a like standard 50. I'm really enjoying shooting the Micro Four Thirds more. I know in the past I bought Micro Four Thirds when it was like just brand new. I bought the EP1 like I think 2 years after it came out, or maybe a year after it came out, and I bought it for the full-time live view and the ability to adapt manual glass, and like it was awesome, but like it didn't quite stick with me. I think part of that is because I didn't really take in that 2x crop. I really liked jamming on fast 50s on there, which in this case ended up making it fast 100s, which is tight, like tight framing. And at that point, like I didn't really get into it. But now that I'm older, like a lot older, I kind of know what I want, and yeah, I stick 28mm, 25mm on there, and I'm really enjoying shooting the system more. But for this video, let us continue to optimize for cheapness / budget kit options. And I think we'll be able to find a very good combination here. And I know what you're probably thinking. You know what would go well with this camera? Auto 110 lenses. And you're right. They would go well, and they do go well with the camera. But no, I'm actually talking about C-mount lenses. The one that I have on here right now. Ooh. There we go. The adapter for C-mount, I found one for around $12 on Amazon, and if you want it, I'll post a link down below for that. And I also found it on AliExpress for like $8 or something. So very cheap. And if you're going to go this route, which, if you want to save some money, I do highly recommend it. They actually do sell brand new C-mount lenses, again, also on Amazon or on AliExpress. And like, there's a 25mm f1.8, it's the one that I'm currently using, and it sells for $30 USD new, like shipped to your door. And the performance isn't bad, especially when you consider that like C-mount lenses are supposed to be for like CCTVs and stuff. But I personally think this lens and this camera, the combo, like it looks pretty great. Like, I know I have a silver lens on a black camera body, but the aesthetic and the size, it fits well. And the lens coverage is more than Micro Four Thirds. So if you like really wanted to, you could adapt this to I think like an APS-C crop sensor, and it should work. I mean, you're gonna get like even softer edges, but like on fourth micro four thirds, throughout the frame, it isn't terrible. Sure, contrast is a bit low, but boosted in post, you're good to go. So, if budget is the primary concern, GH1 and some C-mount glass with the adapter, and I think you can get it all in less than 100 USD. And if you're willing to wait a bit and order from like AliExpress, save $10 or $20. That's a $80 kit altogether. Like, pretty good price, really fun shooting experience, and like with the C-mount lens, it has another thing. I don't know if you want to call it a feature or not a feature, but stepless aperture. So let's see. I am scrolling through the aperture there. There's no clicks. So for movie and video stuff, if you're into shooting video, it makes for a nice manual shooting experience with that. The user experience. We'll start with the good. So, shooting experience on the GH1 is pretty modern. Now, I think this is where the camera really shines. At the time when the camera was made, I think there were some criticisms about the design being really conservative. If you look at this, right? The camera layout, the control dials, the buttons in back, they're very DSLR-like. And there was criticism I remember reading and seeing reviews saying that this made it feel just like a little DSLR. Like it was a camera from the old times. But that ignored the huge benefits of kind of modeling, handling off of DSLRs. In that you had like a reasonably comfortable grip for how small this thing is. You had button placement that was really sensible, and like a mode dial, like a real mode dial. A lot of the cheaper mirrorless cameras, like EPL1, and like the Next 3, no mode dial. Changing modes meant going into the menu, which is awful. Like I don't like it. I do not like that. So they really sacrifice controls to get a tiny size advantage. And like, it's not even to say that this is a very big camera. Like, although it has a grip and sensible buttons, it isn't very big by any means. I mean, it's not the smallest mirrorless camera, but like this comes in at 385 grams. That's still very light. Like the new Panasonic G85, 500 grams. So solid, it's more than 100 grams heavier than the GH1, the original GH camera. Now, I'm going to probably chalk that up to better build materials, but yeah, I mean, this camera's mostly plastic, but you get some weight savings. Now I'm going to go back to the control layout. The camera is pretty intuitive. Combined with the fact that with the EVF, you can actually basically manipulate everything at eye level, like a DSLR. And it speaks to kind of how well thought out the controls are. Like, I can't overstate that. Like, the ability that you can flip through your single shot or continuous shooting settings or self-timer. You got your mode dial, command wheel, and your set of buttons on the back for manipulating ISO, white balance, and like punch and zoom. All can be had and operated one hand. And you even get this weird dial here that has your focusing mode. I mean, for me, it's jammed on manual the whole time anyway, so not a big deal, but it's there. And it's a physical button, or physical controls. So, like, really nice, very good ergonomics. Additionally, like, if you're shooting with the autofocus lens, it isn't that slow. Like, considering it's a first-gen mirrorless camera, like, shooting around with the kit lens, I found the focus fairly good for single-shot shooting. Now, it's not going to be Sony AI Magic super speed pre-focus on like an eyeball from 400,000 feet away in 0.2 seconds. But the single shot AF is not going to get in the way and remind you of the camera's age much. Now, if you're using manual glass with this camera, it is just fairly awesome. Now, again, it's not going to be like modern Fujifilm cameras with its menu systems worth of focusing aids. You don't even get the zebra mode on here. But it has a good, quick implementation of punch and zoom, which I think is more than sufficient for a lot of scenarios. And like it zooms in more than like my Fujifilm X-T1, so you can really nail focus. Now, again, the other good thing, the EVF, it's built in. It's not found on the other cameras at this price point, aside from the original G1, and it has pretty good magnification. The EVF magnification is 1.4, which is a number, and it is hard to contextualize, but like if you've looked into a 4/3 SLR viewfinder and you look into this looks way bigger. And because it is. The original 4/3 finders are kind of small, but with the 2x crop. So yeah, EVF, manual focus lenses, punch and zoom, good experience. Like, I really like the EVF. Now, this might just be me. I know there's probably a lot of people that are fairly fine with taking a photo on the screen, especially with using like cell phone cameras, but having the camera at eye level for me just kind of, it improves the overall photography experience. Now, the last thing I want to talk about for the camera as a pro, is that 12 megapixel sensor. It's still plenty good for modern shooting. Now, it's not that far off from the like plethora of 16 megapixel micro four thirds cameras in terms of pure resolution, and like the nice unintended pro of a lower resolution chip is that when you're using vintage glass or a low end glass like that 25mm C mount, you're not necessarily going to have a sensor that out resolves the glass, so things will still look pretty sharp. And like, it's not something that I can easily imagine with the new 20 megapixel 4/3 chips. But I don't know, maybe this thing is way sharper than I thought and it'll resolve well on a 20 megapixel chip. Who knows? The less good. So this camera isn't all sunshines and rainbows, especially given its age and its cost. So what's the first thing that is less good about this camera? The nighttime. You know that time when the giant big sky fireball goes away for a bit. The bad times. And those bad times, they extend to this camera. This camera does not like the bad times. You will notice that in low light, the EVF will get choppy, and it just kind of makes the shooting more inconvenient. Silver lining though, if you are like framed up and you're using manual focus, or you just want to like punch and zoom, the frame rate picks right back up when you zoom in on the camera. I'm not super sure why, but like it is a noticeable difference. We'll have a quick look at that in a second. I'll film it so that you can have a look. But yeah, the difference of nighttime shooting with EVF, you'll notice the lag. Alright, so I'm just going to show you the camera lag there when you're shooting in low light. So for all intents and purposes, I've really just stopped down the aperture pretty low or pretty small. But yeah, if you go into the punch in zoom and you go here, the frame rate all of a sudden goes pretty good. And you're able to frame things, well, not frame, but you can focus stuff, and then you half press
and you go back to laggy mode. So it's weird. But yeah, so it's kind of a way to get around the laggy EVF. Also, if you're in movie mode, the video also then, the frame rate climbs right back up. So yeah, there you go. Fun facts about the camera.
Back to nighttime nightiness. The high ISO mode is 1600 to 3200, and they're kind of rough. Like, modern noise reduction helps with the RAWs, but still not that great. On par for 4/3 cameras or micro 4/3 cameras at the time, but I tend to keep this camera between ISO 100 and 800 if possible. I mean, you can do the 1600 and 3200 if you need, knowing that like you're gonna crush the details. Additionally, IBIS. What IBIS? There's no IBIS on this thing. So yeah, if you're used to a camera that has IBIS, no dice, you're not finding it here. I know it's on almost everything now, but you know, I'll give it a bit of fairness on here. It's not on everything. I have the Canon EOS RP from 2018 that doesn't have IBIS. So silver lining, one less thing that'll fail. And like, oddly enough, I think for micro four thirds, at least for some of the Olympus cameras, failure is kind of a thing. So at some point last year, I got a crazy deal on a Olympus EPL5. Like, it was a great bundle. Like, it came with the Olympus kit lens and the body cap lens, which is what I actually wanted. And it came with the EVF for $100. But do you know what didn't come with on the EPL5? Working IBIS. That thing died. The IBIS died. Now, and I looked it up, it's not an entirely uncommon issue. Like, if you look for an Olympus camera and you notice the orange or amber blinking IBIS light, there's a problem. But, you know, camera still works, and crazy deal for basically 2 lenses for $100. So I grabbed it. So yeah, silver lining here is that there's no IBIS module to fail on the Panasonic, so yay. And moving back to images, dynamic range. The dynamic range on this camera will fall short. So just don't shoot into the sun and expect to pull back the highlights. At the time that the camera was released, for a micro four thirds camera, is pretty solid. Like, the dynamic range was in line with other cameras at the time. But, you know, modern sensors have like 15, 16,000 stops of dynamic range. You're not getting that here, but you're not getting like, you know, 2002 cameras that have like 3 stops of range. I think this on DxO scores like 12. So you just have to take that into account when you're shooting, and you should generally be fine. Otherwise, like, I'm trying to think of some other stuff to say for the less good part of the video, but I can't really think of any. Like, again, like, the camera's getting a lot of like points for me for the cost, but you know, there aren't huge things wrong with this that show its age. Oh, no, I lied. I remember. There's one thing. Autofocus while tracking, like tracking AF. It ain't great. So like I said earlier, single shot, pretty good. Kind of still feels like a modern camera. But AF tracking, sports shooting, this camera is not. But like, yeah, that's it. That's all I got for the negatives. All right, video. It gets its own section here, and unfortunately, it's going to be a bit sparse. I am not one to judge this camera for video. There are actually kind of a lot of video reviewers, or a lot of videographers that shoot and have reviewed the GH1 in recent memory. So I'd definitely recommend looking to them for some video tippages for the GH1. You might have noticed that I kind of only shoot like static videos of kind of me talking to the camera. And yeah, so not the greatest opinion. Like, I'm probably not going to comment on rolling shutter or anything, although I'm sure this camera has some fairly not good rolling shutter given its age. But yeah, we'll shoot some video and I'll put the B-roll up so you can have a look. Additionally, I'm aware that the GH1 has a video hack to improve the bitrate. I think I tried it before and I didn't notice a huge difference. Like, you could see some stuff, but I did notice the camera got quite crashy. So if I can get the firmware to work, I will label the B-roll when I roll it, and you can see the difference for yourself if there is one on the stock firmware or not. I think the only thing I will say that I noticed with the GH1 is that like the audio input doesn't have an enormous amount of control, and that's not super great. Kind of annoying, but I think you can probably use some audio editing trickery to accommodate the weird automatic audio stuff that the GH1 does. So yeah, with that being said, let's go have a look at the B-roll. Okay, so welcome to the GH1 video test. Here's one of the sample clips that we're going to be looking at. The audio you're listening to right now is straight out of camera from the GH1 using the inbuilt microphones and doing whatever the GH1 is doing with that audio. So in this test, I've got one light on the left off camera shining on these three cameras, and I'm using the C-mount 35mm f1.8, or is it a 1.4? 1.6 apparently. We're stopped down to around f4, and I'm just gonna focus on a different camera and just judge the video quality that way. Now, I know this is probably a pretty boring set of shots, or boring video, but like I said earlier, not a huge videographer, so this video might not be the best to take advice from if you're planning to use the GH1 for purely video. Alright, so here is the video footage out of the GH1 with the hacked firmware. I will say the hacked firmware is kind of nice because it actually lets you save the videos directly as a 24p video instead of the interlaced video that normally comes out of the stock firmware. But yeah, let's have a look and do the same thing. I'm just going to adjust the focus between three different cameras, and we'll have a look at the video quality. Tried to get the exposure the exact same. Probably should have done this on the same day, but I did not. Wow, you can see my 51.2 is a bit dusty there on the Nikon. the conclusion. Okay, to sum this up, I really want to make the point home that the camera value is exceptionally good. It offers a modern shooting experience, it has great controls, at least with respect to photography. The EVS is a good bonus for the price, especially if you intend on pairing this up with vintage or manual glass. And the last great things, high ISO is kind of meh, AF tracking is meh, and dynamic range is okay. Additionally, no IBIS. With that considered though, I think that in 2024, this camera is still a great way of taking photos and exploring video. And it's just so low cost that there are a reasonable amount of these popping up on the used market, that if you're just curious about Micro Four Thirds, it's a great place to start with very little risk. Now, I do want to say, if you want to maximize the distance of your dollars, I will recommend the GH1 with the C-mount adapter and the 25mm f1.8 C-mount lens. All in all, probably looking at, again, $85 for that thing and the set. Now, I know what you're thinking, but what else can I get? I don't like Panasonic. One day or one time, Panasonic rice cooker bullied me at school. Well, it's not much that I can do about the bullying, but like I said, there are a couple mirrorless options at the same price point. Not as low, but not much more. The Olympus EP1, the original one, their Olympus EPL 1 or 2, they can be had for around $120, maybe $80 to $120. And again, keep in mind these cameras don't have built-in EVFs, and the control scheme is not as nice as the GH1. And if you don't mind busted IBIS, I have seen a lot more modern Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras go for pretty low. Like my EPL 5, that was not an abnormal price for the body and a kit lens for one that had a broken IBIS. Now, if you don't want to stick with Micro Four Thirds, Sony's got your back. The next line can be had for pretty cheap, specifically the next three. They seem to be going for around $100 to $140 USD. But I do think there's a huge catch here. The controls, honestly, they suck. I used to have the Nex 3N and the 5. At some point, I even had the 7. I kind of just tried them and tried to figure out whether or not this was a system for me. And all except for the Nex 7 were unbearable. I hated the control scheme on these. Whoever designed those cameras clearly hated buttons. They didn't like physical controls, and then I assume their favorite thing in the world was menus and lists, because that is how you did everything in the camera. You want to change the modes? Open up a list, scroll through. Want to go change ISO? Open up the list, dig into the menu, scroll through, change ISO. It took so many clicks to do a single thing. And aside from that, they even had they for some reason at this point, Sony hadn't figured out how to properly implement some of the weird automatic ISO, their aperture or shutter party. I remember reading for some reason, it would stick cameras on f4, even though if you had an f1.8 lens, if you had it on shutter party, it would never drop the aperture wider or some other weird things that Sony did. I know right now they've come a really long way. This video is being brought to you by the Sony A7 III, and they're really awesome now. But in the past, the next series of cameras, horrible handling. Not to mention no EVF. So I don't know. But if you really wanted the sensor bump to APS-C, that's probably the cheapest way to do it. So, take my opinion with a grain of salt. But yeah, I don't know. Did not enjoy shooting those things. But yeah, enough about that. What did you think about the GH1. Am I just crazy? I could be. Or do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!